Okay, let's go to Emmanuel. He says, year one into the Big Ten, what grade do you give USC and UCLA? Also, who will be the 8th member of the Pac-12?
They're still trying to figure out who the 8th member is. It's got to be the right school. I'm sorry. I don't want Memphis. I don't want Tulane. They have nothing to do with West Coast athletics. Once upon a time, I thought maybe they could save Hawaii and Hawaii could save them, but that's not humanly possible at this point. If I were the Pac-12, I would just go back to the NCAA and say, we've gotten 7 football playing schools. We've added Gonzaga to our national brand in basketball. Give us a waiver and just let us compete with 7 football till we see what else changes going forward. If I had my druthers, if I could make a trade, I'd try to get BYU. But BYU is playing probably in the Big 12 championship game against Neon Deion, Coach Prime in Colorado. So, BYU has really been a surprise, and Arizona State to a degree with what they've accomplished in the Big 12. In terms of the grades, I'd give USC probably a C for going to the Big Ten in football because they're not very good. They're not very complete. And I give UCLA maybe a D because that program has really fallen the aftermath of Chip Kelly. There's a lot of work to be done to save everything there at UCLA, rally them back. With apologies in advance, these guys ought to be bleeping back in the Pac-12. This should have never, ever happened. And John Riley says,
you're right. It shouldn't have happened, but it did happen. UCLA is going to get paid. I mean, they need money. I mean, for that athletic program. But, the 8th member, I don't know who's left, like Texas, San Antonio or something.
Pass.
I mean, who else is left?
Unless you lure SMU out of the ACC. And by the way, that's a fiasco. Cal Stanford in the Atlantic Coast Conference, SMU in the Atlantic Coast, they don't fit geographically, emotionally, structurally.
No.
Maybe SMU, but I don't even know that that's possible because SMU's, they're operating. They got a different payday than Cal and Stanford got. They got more money, but SMU's got more money than God. The amount of money they raised for them to do this, it's just been, I was told the statistics, the amount of NIL money is just unbelievably fascinating.
Old oil money from Texas, maybe?
Oh, big time old money, but their money is good.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, thanks for joining us, Emmanuel.
Okay, here's some more comments about UCLA and USC. This is from Joe. With 2 pro teams and 2 pro football teams and 2 pro basketball teams that are competitive, the UCLA and USC sports popularity took a big hit.
And they're not very good. And by the way, you failed to mention the guy with the ring, the Dodgers. So no, LA market is really different. So no, you're correct in that assessment that the market, I'm not going to say it's crowded because it's a huge market statistically in terms of people who live in the region. But again, if you're not winning, I don't think you have a prayer. But these UCLA basketball numbers for a good program with a really good coach with a great track record of recruiting, Mick Cronin, that's kind of staggering to have just over 4,000 fans per game at Pauley Pavilion. I can't believe that. If Bill Walton were with us, he'd be screaming hell. Where the hell are the fans? But you got to win. And those 2 programs aren't winning right now.
Bill Walton.
Yeah.
I just love Bill Walton. The Conference of Champions. That's just horrible. He's just fantastic. Loved Bill Walton. So rest in peace, big man. But, when obviously UCLA, USC are longtime rivals, and you got the other Pac-12 schools went to the Big Ten. But I wonder if there's going to be new rivalries that are going to emerge, like, UCLA and Michigan State or something, that's going to capture people's attention.
Well, I think we've already seen one, Oregon, Ohio State. All of a sudden, that becomes a rivalry because of what happened at Alton Stadium. Michigan's having a bit of a subpar season. Michigan gets back to being Michigan, then Michigan's going to have rivalry. Now, some other people have kind of fallen. Iowa's not what Iowa has been. Wisconsin has kind of lost some of its luster. So, I mean, there's so many other schools there that can get good again. But in terms of being anybody on the same level as Oregon, nah, not very many. Maybe Ohio State right now, and that's about it.
You think Oregon's going to win it all this year?
Yeah, they sure got a lot of firepower, a lot of talent, and a coach that's absolutely possessed.
Yeah, I think it'd be awesome if they did it.
Playoffs would be good.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for joining us, Joe. Next question.
Okay, let's go here to John. He goes, hey, you left out the biggest injury in the NHL. Alex Ovechkin out week to week, leading the NHL in goals at age 39.
Well, he took an accidental hit, knee on knee. I don't think there was any violence in that. It just happened. And he's going to be out a week and a half or so. But, he's on a roll trying to catch Wayne Gretzky's career record goal scoring mark. So Hopefully, Ovi will be back within maybe 2 weeks max. But he's kind of found the fountain of youth. He's having a much better season this year than he's had in the last couple of years. So I still think there's some gas left in that tank.
So I think of old guys that play hockey, and who was the one that played for the Bruins forever? That was
Phil Esposito?
was it? I don't know. There was one dude that played like into his 50s, didn't he?
Well, no, it's Gordie Howe.
Gordie Howe. That was the one.
No,
yeah.
that was Detroit Red Wings. Then he went to the World Hockey Association. He was unbelievable.
Okay. Pardon me. He was a Red Wing guy. But it's interesting. In all professional sports, you get to your late 30s, and that's usually the end of the line. Unless you're in a special position like you're Tom Brady or you're Greg Maddux or someone like that you can finesse it at that age. But do you think that's what Ovechkin's been doing? Is it's more like brains over brawn?
No, he's big physical, and he can still skate, and he's not had catastrophic injuries. Normally, when you're an older player, the wheels fall off. You got chronic knee problems or whatever. But Ovi has stayed free of a lot of major injuries, knee, shoulder, back, whatever. Gordie Howe is most unbelievable specimen I ever saw. When I got to Cleveland, the World Hockey Association, we had our opening game of the season was against the then Houston Aeros. Gordie Howe played there with his two sons, Mark and Marty. And Gordie was a monstrously big man. I mean, he was a weight training fanatic before weight training was a thing. And the favorite phrase I was always told by old-time hockey players was a Gordie Howe score sheet. That encompassed a Gordie Howe goal, a Gordie Howe assist, and a Gordie Howe fighting major. And he'd go into the corner, elbows up. And if you were in there going to the puck, he'd get the puck and he'd get you too. I mean, I saw him flatten people just the way he played. It wasn't cheap shot stuff, but he was so big and physical. So I always look on the score sheet. That's a Gordie Howe score sheet.
What's the word for that? It's like ornery or something, like there's some guys that are just built that way,
That's
where
who he was.
They're tough, they're strong, they're resilient, and they're going to go they're going to punch you in the nose. They're going to give you an elbow to the gut.
He was. If you try to retaliate, you'd pay a price. You may not pay a price that time, but the next shift, you might be in a crumbled heap in the corner. He was just big old guy from Floral, Saskatchewan. He was a monstrously big man.
Really?
And it's funny, his two sons, Mark and Marty, were skilled defensemen or wingers, but they were not built like him. I mean, he was built like a truck.
Wow.
With elbows.
Thank God that we have a professional sports career opportunity, because otherwise a guy like that would be like, working an oil rig or in a coal mine or something,
Yeah, that'd be an offensive guard in the National Football League.
Well, yeah. So, I mean, it's
monstrously big.
It's good to get these guys in. So.
John, thank you for joining us. Go ahead. Next one.
Okay. Let's go up here to the O-Siders. He says, heard talk about programs should be compensated for recruiting players from group of 5 schools. What would stop that program from putting that money into, say, a basketball program or pocketing the money?
Well, you don't pocket the money. I mean, everybody needs NIL money and creatively finance it. And he asked the question because I was the one that asked the question at the San Diego State press conference. And Sean Lewis totally came out of character. There was no more coach speak. There was no more trophies for just showing up to play a game that you got blown out in. He stepped out of his character and he talked about what needs to be done at the NCAA with the Power Fours helping the group of 5s. And he looked at me directly and said, Lee, if I recruit your son, because I believe he can be a player for the Aztecs, and we put our resources and he becomes a good player, and then suddenly somebody from a Power 4 comes and cherry picks him, USC, Washington, whomever, we should be compensated. Now, he didn't name what a dollar fee would be. He didn't say where the money would come from. Would it come from an NCAA pool? Would it come from the school that took my player, my son, off his roster? He said, we should be compensated so we can use that as NIL money to go get the next star that we can sign, develop, and grow. Now, he is aghast that he doesn't want the group of 5 conferences, the Mountain West, the Mid-American, all those. He doesn't want them to become feeders for the Power 4. But he says that's what the hell's going on right now. So he brought up this idea about compensate us if you're taking our players. That makes a lot of sense to me. Aztecs lost 12 players to Power 4 schools. There's a couple starting linemen at TCU. One of the star linemen at University of Washington was an Aztec. Ohio State star left tackle was an Aztec before he got hurt. So there have been good players here that these coaching staffs have built, developed, and got cherry-picked because the transfer portal allowed it to happen.
Yeah. I mean, that's just, those guys are getting better opportunities, but you say 12 went up to better opportunities.
Yeah, 42 went into the portal total. And now some of those guys transferred to New Mexico or smaller schools, but 12 became starters in the Big Ten or what used to be the Pac-12, et cetera.
Well, I think a lot of those players think, that they're going to take a step up. But there's a lot of guys go in the portal and then no one even picks up the phone and calls them, and then suddenly career over.
Yeah, you got to be very careful if you're going to do that. Hey, good question. No, that's the explanation as to where that story came from, because I asked the questions at the Aztec press conference. Go ahead, John. Next question.
Okay, let's go to Bob here. He goes, connect, reaction.
Damn good. Thank you. So far, so good. I mean, 4 games, shooting 40% from the 3-point line. That's pretty impressive. Now, I will caution you, though, here, Bob. I mean, let's not order NBA Championship Series tickets yet. The more he plays, the more these coaches are going to look at things on video, and they will find a way to defend him, and then they will find a way to slow him down and take him out of his game, and then it'll be up to Dalton Connect to show how he can handle what's being done to him. So going forward, things are going to change. It's not going to be slam dunk 3-point shots all night, all week long. That's a really good, I'm just giving you the explanation of what life in the NBA, like in the NFL is. John's running up and down the hallway here. Hey, my rookie quarterback did really well. I said, yeah, see me in week 6 after they got video on him and see how they're blitzing him and how he's doing in week 7 of the NFL season. That's what this whole thing is all about.
Okay, so I got to go back to the hacksaw shtick. Reaction. I mean, I can picture Jim Rome saying that, but you would often say, like, react to me. I mean, break that down for me.
Just historically, when you're doing sports talk radio, and we were the pioneers and we did it really well, everybody had an angle. Everybody had, as you would say, shtick. And I just came up with this off the top of my head because I always put hot topics on the table. And I would express opinions off the hot topics on the table. But the difference is I demanded that you get off your ass and get on the phone and give me your reaction to hot topics on the table. So obviously, Bob was a follower for a long time. He remembered that. React.
I think it's so cool, though, how your gloss creeps into Jim Rome. And Rome still uses it to this day.
It's okay. I got no problem.
But it's cool. I mean, because if you know the whole 690 backstory, it's like I kind of was behind the curtain to a degree.
He knows all the backstories in the dirt. Thanks for the comment. Go ahead, move on.
Okay, let's go here to Randy River. He was talking about the Gordie Howe hat trick, and he says, yeah, goal, assist, and a fight. And then he went on to say 5 stars.
5 stars. Are you probably 5 stars Gordie Howe or 5 stars for Hacksaw and the guy from left field?
Well, I think he's talking about that for, but by the way, the 5-star thing is for Apple Podcasts, So if you go on the Apple, most people when they're listening to podcasts usually do on their iPhone, and you go there and we've got like about 22 or 23 people that have left us 5-star ratings, and about 7 or 8 that have left like a description and comments, and they're all very positive and they're wonderful. So if you want to support the podcast, that's how you can do it. So Randy, 5 stars. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Okay, let's keep going here, and let's go to Jason. He goes, Merrill should have won. Ridiculous and beyond East Coast bias.
Not paying attention. So they're not paying attention because the Padres haven't won bleep in the history of the franchise. I mean, yeah, they went to the World Series. They were there, and they were out of there pretty quickly in the 2 World Series they were at. And I have no beef with Paul Skeens. I mean, that's a phenomenal thing that young pitcher out of LSU did after just a half year on the minor leagues. But that being said, that's 23 starts versus 154 games that this kid played. So I just thought the voting would have been a lot closer. And I don't know how many pro Mike Schultz fans there are out there, but for him to get 1 first place vote, considering what he accomplished, and then for Dave Roberts to accomplish what he did he had a great pitching staff. They were all on the operating table having surgeries and on the disabled list, and he got no votes. No first round votes, no second round votes. He only got 3/3. How's that possible? I know Pat Murphy did a nice job, and he had a lot of obstruction in Milwaukee, and he got them to 93. But how does Dave Roberts get zero recognition at all?
This is the whole thing just seems like it's orchestrated. It doesn't match logic. When you look at this whole thing. But I just want to talk a little bit about Merrill and whether or not I should have won the award, because there's always a problem comparing a position player with a pitcher. And, even in those rare times where a pitcher wins the MVP, like I think Clayton Kershaw did that once, right? You always hear this argument. The guy plays 1 out of every 5 days, and this guy's playing like nearly 162. It's apples and oranges. Do you think there should be 2 Rookie of the Year awards, one for pitcher, one for position?
No, because then you're watering down the whole field. Cy Young encompasses a whole pile of things. MVP encompasses a whole lot of things, but I don't think we should have a dividing line that we ban pitchers from being in the MVP thing or the Rookie of the Year thing, et cetera. So tough call.
Okay.
Tough call.
Okay, let's keep moving here. We'll talk to David. He goes, Juan Soto's good, but I worry about a player like this who seems to be about the money. Very little outreach in New York. He'll be good, but you'll be limited to what you can acquire in future years.
Well, if he doesn't have injuries, he'll continue to play. He's age 26. He's still got a lot of good years left if he does not get hurt. There's a whole philosophical thing. He's an outsider. He played 1 season. Aaron Judge has become iconic. And I'm not saying he's better than Mickey Mantle or as popular as Mickey Mantle. He's obviously not Babe Ruth. But he's done some phenomenal things within, how can I say this, the academic educational community for the city schools. He's done a whole bunch of charity things.
Right on.
And dude has hit 50 home runs in a row, 3 straight years, and made himself a pretty good center fielder. Granted, he had a really bad World Series. But are you going to pay Soto more than you're paying him because Scott Boras wants you to pay more than you're giving Aaron Judge? Is that fair to Aaron Judge? And also the Yankees don't want to cripple themselves. They got other needs. And you're going to pay somebody 45 to 50 million a year, man, that eats up a lot of your budget space to go get other pitching, etc. And I know you can argue and say, well, Lee, it doesn't matter. You're in the number 1 market in the country and the Steinbrenners are rich. Well, Steinbrenners don't want to pay luxury tax. The Steinbrenners want to reinvest in players. So fine line, how much you pay him. I don't know that I'd pay him more than Judge at this point in time, but you don't want to lose him. But I would not accede to Scott Boras. I just have a problem. Boras does this with every client on every team. He doesn't give a crap about your roster, the fans, the ticket price. All he cares about is the volume of money he gets with the player and how it makes him look as a super agent. Mr. Capitalist, am I wrong or am I right?
You're right, but it's not necessarily a bad thing, to try to go out and get your value in the marketplace. So, Aaron Judge, I just want to make a comment. It's interesting because he grew up outside of Stockton.
Yeah.
And who grew up roughly kind of near that was Josh Allen, from the Central Valley in California.
Right.
Those 2 big boys, man, farm boys, that's what I think about. But Juan Soto, it's like, yeah, he racks up the numbers, but in a crunch moment, he'll take that walk rather than trying to hit a double or to drive in some runs, and I know this is a difficult comparison, but do you remember back in the 80s when Jack Clark used to give Tony Gwynn crap and said he's not a team guy, he only cares about his statistics, which we knew was BS. But do you see that Soto is like that?
No, because I don't think Soto is Tony Gwynn. Tony Gwynn hit 334, 360. The 1 year, 392. He's on base all the time. Now it's the responsibility of everybody else to drive him home. Soto obviously hits 280. And he had 41 home runs this season. And he's had some really good seasons as a young player. And he's got more power than Gwynn has. But Gwynn, to me, was much more consistently star status than Juan Soto is.
Yeah, Gwynn was just a good dude. He had the right attitude. And that's what Juan Soto is missing here. Because, Yankee fans are probably feeling like we've got to sign Soto. They gave up a lot to get him. He's the marquee guy. We're the Yankees. We get whoever we want. But yeah, what if he went to play for the Phillies or the Mets? The Yankees fans would be upset.
They would be. But the Yankees are simultaneously negotiating with Teoscar Hernandez of the Dodgers on a short 2 or 3 year deal. And the Yankees need outfield help. So Soto vacated, and the Yankees wound up with Blake Snell and Teoscar Hernandez. there'd be probably a better, deeper team. You wouldn't have Soto, but obviously you'd have a power hitting outfielder who's a good team guy, and obviously a Cy Young Award frontline rotation guy to put next to Garrett Cole. So you're a Yankee fan in New York? Put that hot dog down, that Needix hot dog. Put that hot dog down, and would you rather have just Soto, or would you rather have the two free agents I just mentioned?
I take the two free agents over Soto because it's 2-for-1, and you need a pitching as well. I'm still like hesitant about Juan Soto. We just got weird vibes when he was here in San Diego, even though he hit well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in that clubhouse. I've dealt with that. I'm not sure that I didn't dislike him. I just didn't appreciate the aura, because every time I talked to him, the answer was almost as if Scott Boras was lecturing me. And I said, enough of this crap. But things change. I mean, I did not like dealing with Manny Machado early on because I just thought he was a punk. And everything the Baltimore guys told me, I was seeing in person. Everything that happened at Dodger Stadium. That's why he gets booed all the time. I was kind of seeing in person. Now he's evolved. He's changed.
Yes.
He's a more complete player now. So again, those of us who deal with these guys in that clubhouse, in that locker room, we just have different perceptions. And my perceptions may not be all correct. My perceptions may be off base some too, but he's a great player. But I'm just not giving him half of my salary cap because I know I got to put 25 guys on the field. I have to pay other guys. And you go into luxury tax, that's like pissing away a lot of money. You know, in the Padres 2 years ago, they had to pay a $40 million luxury tax because all the money A.J. Preller spent. That's $40 million that doesn't go into your organization for players. It's $40 million you give into the commissioner's office.
Well, but the Yankees, you know, they got their own network. We shouldn't cry too hard about the Yankee money problems. But you know what? The big difference between Manny and Juan Soto is Manny plays defense, and Juan Soto is a disgrace out there in the corner outfield.
I didn't know there were landmines out in left field, but I guess there must be the way.
We saw when he was playing here in San Diego.
All right. Hey, good comment, David. Thanks for joining us.
Okay, let's go here to Joseph. He goes, who will the Padres sign and then trade? Who will turn the Giants down? I want to talk to you, Rancho Bernardo.
Well, Rancho Bernardo says the Padres, I believe, are not going to get to 200 million payroll. There might be a bump from 169 where they were at the end of the season to maybe 180. I just don't think ownership is going to do this. I think ownership is raking in all this money to make up for all the money that Preller burned through in the Peter Seidler era. And they're not going to be shut out. They are going to make acquisitions because A.J. Preller always does make acquisitions. But I don't think in terms of marquee guy up front that they're going to wind up doing that. I've got a whole laundry list of potential free agents out there I think they should look at. That'll be another topic for maybe next week or the week before we go to the winter baseball meetings. We'll kind of break down some specifics. I mean, there's like I want to say it's at least 170 free agents out there now of all different levels. Aside from the superstars, there are mid-level guys that are pretty good ball players. AJ will find a way to do that. Now, whether or not he makes a trade, and I never rule that out that Garrett Crochet could come here, but the price will have to be paid, and he's going to have to pay a piece of Cronenworth's salary, or maybe he has to give up Campusano because the White Sox went 3-for-1 or 4-for-1, and Crochet's name is being mentioned everywhere. He's mentioned with the Mets, the Yankees, the Boston Red Sox, and the Dodgers. So the question is, what is AJ going to pay to make a deal? As we get to the winter baseball meetings that start the first week of December, we'll have more specifics as to who's available and what I think they're going to do.
AJ's cooking something up.
He always is.
He is. He's gonna, so did you see the piece of news about how the Padres now have Leonardo DeVries is now ranked higher than Ethan Salas?
Mm-hmm.
That surprised me.
No, because he's hitting. Salas is hitting 206 and struggled in Arizona Fall League. But Salas is a hell of a defensive catcher. And again, you can't equate anything at this young point of their career because this is 18-year-old versus 18-year-old. And in some cases, they force-fed them. That's why Salas is hitting 206 at AA. He's not a AA player at age 19 or 20. It's going to take some time. But this is where they're ranked right now at the lower level. The proof in the pudding will be what they do when they get to San Antonio in AA, what happens to them at AAA if it's El Paso, and how quickly they progress. So it's a little early to Bet your money on can't miss.
Well, do you think one of those guys gets dealt, or do you
No,
think? Yeah,
I would not do it. But
because they don't got nothing else, like really in the minors besides those two main dudes.
no, they've got Campusano, who you could trade, but that means then you have no immediate catcher of the future. But he's got holes in his game. Cronenworth, but nobody wants 7 years, 70 million for Cronenworth. Oh, I happen to like Jake, and I think he's a grinder, and I think you need some of those characters in your everyday batting order. So only time will tell to see what else is out there. But trust me, AJ Preller will do something.
Of course he will. That's what makes it fun.
Thanks, Joe.
Okay, let's go here to Callan. He goes, would love for the MLB and NHL to go back to Montreal and Quebec City. Bring back the Expos and Nordiques.
Well, I don't think the NHL is going back to Quebec City. They've had opportunities in that brand new Olympic arena, but I think the fact that they're in the middle of renovation of Olympic Stadium, and Montreal is a much different marketplace now than it was back when they had the Expos. And I think there's well-heeled Canadian industrialists that would be ownership rather than who owned them before, the Bronfman family, the liquor and spirits people. It's just a different time, I think, in Canada as it relates to Canadian economy, as it relates to Canadian population, as it relates to the Canadian dollar versus the American dollar. A lot of people don't know that when you're in Canada, you pay your players in American dollars. So it's a different dollar figure than Canadian dollars. So we'll see. But Tampa's got a year to figure this out, or St. Petersburg's got a year to figure it out. And we'll see if the commissioner can help them find a way to get this done. If not, then maybe the franchise moves. But Nashville is out there. Nashville seems to really be on the front burner in terms of we have a minor league stadium that can be retrofitted to make it major league stadium. It'd be a great regional market in the Mid-South. So keep an eye on Nashville. I personally would love to see Montreal.
It's interesting. Do you ever follow Super 70s Sports on X?
Once in a while.
He's actually pretty interesting, and he brings up a lot of old school stuff in the 70s of sports. He loves the Expos, and he'll always kind of have this romantic love affair with the logo, where the way that logo is broken down into, what is it? Montreal is an M, the little E was the Expo, and I think a B was baseball.
Yeah.
And it was cool how that's broken down, but it's fun to see people remember those old teams.
He was there the night Bill Stoneman threw the Montreal Expo no-hitter. That's all.
Yeah, and it's just cool to have one of those hats or one of those jerseys, because not everyone understands it, but those that do understand it love it.
And they were pretty damn good for a while. The Gary Carter, Andre Dawson group.
Tim Raines.
Oh, hell yes.
Randy Johnson was there, and Pedro Martinez.
Yeah, they had a lot of really good young players. They did a great, great job. Dave Dombrowski had his start there as player personnel guy and general manager, and they were really good, but the cost of keeping players and the economy collapsed, and what happened in Canada versus the U.S. dollar, the Bronfman family just could not fund baseball as the free agent prices just continued to go up and up, and the stadium was falling apart, an Olympic Stadium, which is, 1976 Montreal Olympics? Yeah, that needed retrofit, and where was that money going to come from? So I think things were really different back then. They're different now, so
Wasn't there one year that the Expos were going to be really good, but the strike kind of screwed them?
Yeah, Felipe Alou was the manager, and they got screwed.
Was that the 94 strike?
Yeah, was that why they wiped out the rest of the season?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was the one.
They canceled the World Series and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they were rocking and rolling. They really had a good team.
And that's the one where Gwynn was, pushing 400, I think. But then there was that strike in 81 as well. And that there's been a number of others. But I remember Montreal got screwed by that.
Exactly.
Remember Warren Cromartie? That's a name that goes back.
Great player.
Yeah.
Rusty Staub, Le Grand Orange.
Yeah, there you go.
Hey, we know our stuff here. We're just not showing up in the last 15 minutes trying to masquerade as a talk show host. When you need to know, we got the info. Even him in left field comes up with these things. This is absolutely amazing. Hey, Callum, thanks for being with us. Let's do a couple more here.
Okay, let's go to Richard. He goes, Fans Forum. Hey, what's your reaction on what the Dodgers said on defeating San Diego on Mookie Betts' podcast?
It's really interesting because Dave Roberts was the first one. And now the players have followed up and kind of exclamation pointed what Dave Roberts said. Dave Roberts said our World Series was against San Diego. Atmosphere, the whole aura of what the Padres and Dodgers rivalry, quote, has become. And then the players have said the exact same thing, how cool the Petco Park atmosphere was. No, just don't bring it up. Please don't. I get it. ache in my heart when I think of 24 straight shutout innings when they were one game away from going to the NLCS, which I thought they would have won, which would have put them in the World Series, which I think they probably could have won. And I'm not supposed to cheerlead for any team, but in this case, damn, the Padres were this close. And I thought this was the year, or next year has to be the year to be in the World Series.
So San Diego, it's
Oh,
like Marlon McCree. I mean, we could go back, and the San Diego sports curse has just killed us, but it is nice for them to show respect to the Padres and that rival, because it was a legit rivalry, and it was clearly their most difficult opponent in the playoffs. So it's nice to hear that as a Padre fan, but still the Padres have got to beat the Dodgers.
You got to get there. That's all. You got to get there. It has to happen next season. It really does, because after that, then we're talking players 33, 34, 35. Guys are going to be 40 years of age. Are stuck with these long-term contracts that Preller gave up. It has to happen real quick. Let's do a couple more here before we go to social media.
Okay, here's one from Manny talking Dodgers. He says, Lee, the Dodgers should offer Juan Soto a 3-year, $210 million contract. Short-term deal is a plus for the Dodgers, and it allows Soto to be a free agent before he hits 30.
Not a bad call. As I've indicated, I was told that it might be a 10-year offer with a 5th year in which he could opt out, go back as a free agent at age 31. There are ways to creatively finance it. I don't think historically, like the Dodgers are not giving out long-term contracts to any pitcher. They're not doing that anymore. And I think even though they did what they did with Ohtani, but that was creatively financed with deferrals, and they did take on Mookie, and they obviously got the Freeman contract. I just don't think they're willing to go 13 or 14 years with anybody, especially a Scott Boras client. That's novel. Whether or not those guys would do it, but do the math for me, John. 3 into 210 is what?
70.
They're not paying him $70 million. Not paying anybody $70 million, but they may go 3 years, 140, 3 years, maybe 150. But no, they're not given that dollar value.
Well, didn't I read somewhere that the Dodgers were out on the whole Soto thing, or are they very much in?
Well, I think they're in because they did have an extended meeting with Andrew Friedman, Stan Kasten, and all the baseball people with Scott Boras and Soto. But I was told that 10 years is the max, and to creatively do this, we'll let you opt out after 5 if you want to opt out and go back as a free agent at age 31. So that's kind of win-win. But then understanding Scott Boras, he wants volumes of money, and he wants the highest average forever. It's a big issue.
Show me the money.
Okay.
Show me the money.
One more.
Okay, let's go to get a social media one, and we'll squeeze it in. And let's go. Okay, let's go here. Let's talk a little Chargers. We haven't gotten to the Chargers yet. This is from Jody. It says, our run game will start to show up again now that teams have to respect Herbert and the rookie and their pass game. They kept saying we don't have a good enough receivers. Yes, we do. And they now know it is so that it will change how the offense plays. They will now be able to really make the defense have to think about things too much and make them mess up. The run and the pass games are both just fine. Give it time.
They are growing. Herbert has made those kid receivers really special. Those 3 receivers are averaging 14, 15, and 16 yards per catch, chunk plays down the field. I don't like the fact that the protection is still really shaky. Herbert's taken, I want to say 28 sacks maybe. He's taken a lot more hits. I don't understand why the offensive line with 3 number 1 picks is not better in total pass protection. Has Herbert busted some big runs? Yeah, because he's running for his life. And he had an incident last Sunday. I thought he was going to get hurt. He got twirled around in the pocket trying to avoid one blitzer. He turned, and another Bengal player was right there. Luckily, the Bengal player pulled off and hit him in the shoulder rather than plastering him and flattening him. Herbert could have gotten a concussion, could have really gotten hurt. That's a byproduct of what I think has been very inconsistent pass blocking and blitz pickup. Run the ball, sometimes yes, sometimes no. We'll say this, though. When we get to postseason, and the Chargers, I think, probably going to be a playoff team, when we're in postseason, you're not playing bad defenses anymore. You're playing big boys. And if they're scuffling and struggling to run the ball now, when you get to postseason, you're going to probably play some real damn good defenses. You think you're going to be able to run the ball then? So we'll see. But they're throwing it, and Herbert scares you. Herbert's a little bit like a young John Elway right now. Elway used to bust some runs, and he'd scare the hell out of defenses because you knew he was going to break containment, make a play down the field running, or make a play, pull up and throw it. Herbert can do that now. So you do have to pay attention to that.
You know, when the sideline reporters like get with the coach and they
Mhm.
talk about in and out of the half, and a lot of times coaches in the NFL, they're like loud, they're aggressive, they're talking about X and O's and what we need to do different. But when they interview Jim Harbaugh, it's a very different vibe. You know, it's like he's not really paying attention, at least in that interview, talking about a lot of the minutia. He's always sort of talking about the energy, and how they're playing, what their mental approach is. It's amazing the culture change that Harbaugh's created with the Chargers.
That's who he is from a personality, intelligence standpoint. Some of his press conferences I've been on Zoom are just football, 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 off on a tangent. He was asked about the Harbaugh Bowl with his brother and John and Jim competing and all that. He's talking football and what the Ravens are and how we've fixed everything with the Chargers. And, oh, by the way, this game on Monday night, that's my mother and father's anniversary. And he goes off on this tangent about his parents growing up and all the places they went in Kentucky, and unique guy. He's changed the culture. Got to keep the players healthy. I hope there's going to be an improvement going along the way here. So Monday night, it's going to be a good game.
Are LA fans warming up to the Chargers?
Well, the last home game, it was pretty electric there. So yeah, this game is going to be wild. I'm sure it's going to be a lot of people wearing powder blues. So for the first time now, that's only based on how good you are and how deep in the playoffs you go. Because if they get sidetracked, if this doesn't work out, it'll be the same old, because there's so many other things in LA to root for.
Yeah, maybe they'll go to a UCLA basketball game at Poly.
A lot of seats available.
Yeah.
Good tickets still available. Okay. One more social media. Go ahead.
Okay, here we go. Let's this is typical of the Dodger fans that are dancing like peacocks. This is from Lino. He says, "You're still going to be a doormat, buddy, no matter what you get or what you do. It's all about Dodger baseball, homeboy, California love dog."
All right, Lino, that's okay. No problem rooting for your best team. That's great. That's a great organization. Dodger Way works. Be intrigued to see if they get Sasaki, because I think they're going to get Sasaki. But I'll tell you, they just met with Blake Snell. So, I mean, they're putting a lot of cards on the table. And that organization's calling card is pretty impressive. Who they are, what they've done, how they pay their players, how they treat their players, the culture of Dodger baseball. I mean, it's a great place. And until the Padres beat these guys, until the Padres get to the World Series and then start to do it consistently, the Padres are running uphill against those guys. It can be done. They almost did it this time. They let it get away. So you have a right to walk around and flash your ring to us fans, because if it happens in San Diego, I guarantee you they'll be walking around flashing this wing here. Just admit for me one thing, Lino. They scared the hell out of you in the playoffs, didn't they? They had you.
They did. Well, here's like another comment, just so I'll bring up a quick one. And this is from Dodgers 34. He goes, "Shut up, little brothers." And so this whole thing. Now you hear me, I kind of make believe like I'm whining about this, but I love this. I love this smack talk. I love the rivalry. And they're probably going to say, "Oh, it's not really a rivalry. You guys don't matter." But it is a rivalry. And I love the smack talk. And, people have gotten on Dodger fans' case. A lot of people thought, "Oh, the Dodger fans are bullies and they're this or that." But man, I just love this. I just want the Padres to be able to return the punch.
We always ask that you use good faith language. So don't treat John Riley that way. Shut up, little brother. I'm sure he's making reference to you. Can't be making reference to the host.
People are convinced that you're a Padre fan or you're a Dodger fan or you're a Padre hater or a Dodger hater. They don't know what to make of you.
What it make to me is we do sports talk the way it should be done.